fängt an. Und,
Aber ich würde Sie trotzdem gern vorstellen, Herr Klöckner.
Ja, sehr gerne.
Am Anfang.
Machen Sie das.
Transmedial gibt ein Zeichen. Ne? So we are very happy to welcome here to our second live stream of the day for our side event as part of the first New European Bauhaus Festival that takes place in Brussels, but also here in Saxony-Anhalt with the initiative for new European Bauhaus. And I'm very happy to welcome the professors of the Anhalt University of Applied Science, Professor Niebergall and Professor Klöckner. And also the students are here within the presentation. They have a lot to tell, a lot to show. That's why I keep myself short and would hand over to Professor Niebergall.
Thank you very much. Very welcome. It's an honor for me to present this project, what we called the New European Bauhaus Saxony-Anhalt project, as a kind of a structural transformation lab. And our first inspiration for this project was this drawing by Gunther Stölze, a former Bauhaus student in the 20s, who has drawn this spiral. And the spiral for us was very inspiring, because the spiral is at one hand a very dynamic form, and it is a form that spreads out, and that has to do also with the new European Bauhaus, spreading out of knowledge, spreading out of methodologies for a change in our urban development, in our social development, but it gets also back to the point. And in our case, the point is the city of Zeitz. Next slide, please. Together for a New European Bauhaus, the Saxony-Anhalt project. Next slide, please. Where is Zeitz? It's in the middle of Germany. Why is there also Katowice marked? I had the opportunity, for instance, some weeks ago to speak our project in Katowice, a region, also a coal region, which has similar problems or issues to tackle like we. Zeitz is in the very southeastern corner of Saxony-Anhalt, this federal state here in the middle of Germany. The next slide, please. And Zeitz is also in the center of the so-called Central German lignite district, which looks back to a rich and prosperous industrial history before World War II. And after World War II, the coal industry became much and more important and stimulating also energy-intensive industries to settle and grow. And because it was in the former East Germany, Zeitz faced a structural breakdown after the fall of the German wall, because most of the industries in this region failed, had to undergo a first structural transformation. And what is now, anyhow, the second transformation is the decision of phasing out the use of lignite, which confronts the region with really new, serious challenges, but also chances at the same time. We see here some picture, historic view of the city of Zeitz. To this we come later on, a former baby carriage factory in Zeitz, which was one of the major industries in Zeitz, and the coal mining in Profen. Next slide, please. When we look at Zeitz from above, it's a quite beautiful city. It was a residence of a bishop for, don't know, 1,000 years, or at least 1,000 years ago. A lush green environment, and in the background also prospering industries. Next slide, please. And this is only a stone throw away from Zeitz, the lignite mine in Profen, which had, of course, as you see, harsh impact on the environment, and which will be closed about 2035 or something. And this has, of course, also, next slide please, an impact on the city of Zeitz. Here we see, in a way, the dark side. We have abandoned houses in the city center because many people, especially young people, left the city. I mentioned already this baby carrier factory today, which is partly empty, and we have some places with a lost beauty, but what's perhaps also, when we think at the future and at that the European Bauhaus is also about the question of reconnecting to nature. This is of course not the solution, but gives an hint how can we reconnect to nature. Next slide, please. But what we learned when we from Dessau, for instance, with our students first came to Zeitz, that there's much more than we expected to build upon. We have new industrial settlements and extension of existing industry, like the sugar industry, a new creative hub in the so-called noodle, which was a noodle factory before, where especially startups are dealing with augmented reality. You see here that they simulate different situations, from burning for firefighters or healthcare situations and so on. And we have, for instance, also fostered by the city a digitalization center. Next slide, please. This is an interior view of the so-called noodle, where these quite different startups settled already, and this I found very important. It says ideas are the new coal, and the new coal, and that gives hope for the city. And what I found quite interesting for our project is this, which I found, this picture, which I found in a window of the Kunsthaus open space. It's all about, if you look at it from the left, and if you look at it from the right, it's all about perspective. And this is the idea of working together in interdisciplinary teams, from science, from arts, from education, because they have all different perspectives. But when these perspectives come together, something new emerges. Next slide, please. What are the main issues we are dealing with? In the core, as I said, of course, the post-fossil transformation of this region, especially in Zeitz, into a sustainable and resilient environment that stimulates interaction and creativity. But when we think about what is necessary, when we speak about climate change and the change of building industry, for instance, the change of our environment, then we know that this intensive change and social transformation is only possible to achieve when it is combined with a really cultural shift, with a mindset, a change of the mindset of the people. We are a big team, a consortium of many institutions. We as the school, the Bauhaus Dessau Foundation, Fraunhofer, and of course the city of Zeitz and many others. Next slide, please. One forward-thinking institution is the so-called C4 Carbon Cycle Culture Club, an interdisciplinary think tank for the next and the over next steps to a transformation. They think about principal questions like, is sugar, for instance, usable as building material? What is the role of agriculture when it comes to develop new resources, post-fossil resources. Of course, agricultural products are in a way fossil, but it's something different than burning coal. And when I spoke about the change of the mindset, what is also important is really to start with the younger and the youngest generation. And for that, for instance, the Bauhaus agent, led by the Bauhaus Foundation, develop a prototype for cultural education in this structural transformation situation. And they work with school classes, holding workshops, and next slide, yes, develop ideas and wishes from people who are living there, and where the city of Zeitz is of course very much interested that they stay there and that they find a place for their living there. And it's extremely open what comes in their mind. For instance, a heated bus stop, which is necessary that young people who don't find open coffee can meet, and many other ideas. Next slide, please. And it is also another dimension of communication, of what we call involvement, that people are integrated not just in a question and answer situation, but that they really are involved by telling their stories, telling their dreams. And what is especially for Hermann Klöckner important to integrate also contemporary means of communication, like for instance, one idea, for instance, that we have three-dimensional virtual models of changes of certain places in Zeitz, and if you scan a QR code at a house or on the floor or something, then this virtual model emerges, and people can react directly. It's bullshit, or perhaps we could change it a little bit in this direction, or whatever. And what the students, together with my colleague Johannes Kister and Hermann Klöckner, dealt with was, again, the very core of the spiral, which is the former ZEKIWA baby carriage factory in Zeitz. You have seen it already. One in the moment empty, historic building, very beautiful building. In part, it is already under construction into the archive of the city, and I think co-working spaces will move in. But we have still many open spaces for ideas, and for these ideas, I hand over to my colleague Hermann. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralf, and thank you for the introduction. I can see the time flying, and that's the thing for transformation altogether. So I'm going to give an intro on how the studio project was approached, and then we're going to have some example projects. Here's Johannes Kister. He cannot be here today, but says hi on the introduction of the exhibition that we brought here to you and the web audience as well. And the idea is now to have an exhibition which is kind of not an exhibition of a final thing, because that would necessarily not be interesting, but it was first ideas that we look into and to collect feedback onto. And you're warmly invited to give your feedbacks on YouTube, and to give feedback also here in the crowd to these drafts that we're going to see. We cannot focus on every project, but we have 2 or 3 projects that we have as examples to look into. So what was our philosophy? The philosophy was to approach this in a mindset of being really, really progressive. So let me give you an examples of this first idea. It was all about the Genossenschaft. So the Genossenschaft is a very German word. It's hard to translate, but it's basically community. And we have quotes in here from the people that we asked on the street. And this is actually, what shall this be? What shall Genossenschaft be? I don't really care. Isn't this an old idea? So these kind of comments were coming very, very early on. People were very critical in the city, and we really appreciated that. So if we look at these questions as a collection, we developed our ideas on the basis of this. And so this is taken from the cover of the New European Bauhaus application that we actually had, and it's a project led by a German design student and an international architecture student. And I'm going to give some introductional words to it, but then I'm going to hand over to the students. So you can already come to the front, please. And what I found really, really interesting about this project on the ZEKIWA-Area maybe manifests in this one picture. It's also up here. So where you can see that there's the historical lines and the modern building lines in direct continuation to each other. And the philosophy behind that is that you work with local materials. None of these materials travel further than 10 kilometers. The students did consider to recycle bricks, but it turns out it's a nice idea, it's a good story, but it doesn't really work out in the carbon footprint, so they're using new bricks, but 3D printed ones, very, very good in energy conservation. And they take the lines from the past and put them to the future. And it's actually the local wood that they're using that has the smell of the local woods, the local forests, to make it open for the people to actually appreciate it. Because if you want to go progressive into the future, I think people need a reference from the past as well. And this is not in any ways nostalgic or something. It's more in the spirit maybe of the Renaissance. And even if you look at the Bauhaus back in the days where it was looking forward, it was also looking into the past, but not copy-paste. And critically taking it to the next level. This is the approach that the students were working with, and I'm going to hand over to them because it's already too many professors talking here. So, hey guys. Okay.
So thank you for the introduction and welcome. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Abed.
And yeah, we developed this together. I'm a designer and he's the architect. And yeah, we were starting out with looking at all the problems that Zeitz faces, and as we heard, people are moving away, and the young people are going away where there are more work opportunities, and we wanted to see how we can look at the site where you know, the buildings that are there are deteriorating, and how we can give the people that are left behind in sites that kind of feel powerless, and how we can give them more empowerment, and how we can give them a facility at the ZEKIWA site to empower them more and give them the place that they need to really give them the place that they need to make the changes that they need for themselves, because as we have gathered from the research that our design bachelor students and the interviews that they have done, we have gathered that they want to make the changes that they need for themselves, because they have seen from the past that the change is not coming from the outside, so they want to make the changes for themselves. So we want to give them the places at the ZEKIWA site. And that's why we really also want to do this in a sustainable way, as Hermann has said. So we want to work with the local timber from Saxony-Anhalt, and there is a lot of forest to work with. So we really wanted to start out from the core structure of the building itself. So we want to really work with the local timber, because timber is one of the very few building materials that is CO2 negative. So
if I might interfere, like real
yes.
quickly as a handover to architecture, I thought it was really, really interesting that you had a concept where in these little structures people could rebuild their flat on their own or with the help of the neighbors to identify with the building. Something that has been done in the past, and where actually when a family gets another child or when they divorce or something new happens, the life conditions change, they can rebuild their flat on their own. So it's like, for me, it was an interesting mix between design, interior design, do-it-yourself movement, and architecture. How did that feel? How did that play out for you guys in the project? I would be curious.
This particular point, we thought we can, and the idea of empowerment and of facilitating the infrastructure for people of Zeitz. So this idea in particular implemented itself in our project by providing the workshops that everybody live in the development can have access to it, where they can actually build change the layout of their own apartments by, let's say, whenever they have like let's say like new child or new situation in their homes. People face a lot of changing in their lifetime, and then they can decide actually what type of changes they want, whether they want like to add a new wall in their apartments, whether they want to remove and give like more space for living room. So another point we implemented in our project that has to do with the idea of empowerment and facilitating the infrastructure of people of Zeitz is giving also the zone, the gardening zone, where they can grow their vegetables and where they can have also greenhouses to store and to also maybe sell excessive products they can grow. On another level, we also thought about the idea of having the importance of public spaces and the interaction between people living in this area. So we provided the public areas, and we provided them with the cultural plaza. We also included the historical parts of this site, which is the ZEKIWA, the old factory. We included the courtyard and made it part of the whole development. Also, we have like a nice old abandoned church there, which also stands there to somehow as a reminder of the rich history. Yeah.
I would wonder, you collected feedback now. This exhibition, the slides before, and probably also today, it's going to be feedback, positive, negative ones, critical ones. So how are you taking this to the next level now for your thesis, and maybe also to be really implemented in the city of Zeitz? What are your thoughts on that? Because the exhibition has the status as we see is kind of 6 weeks ago. Where are you taking this to now?
Now it's we're thinking more in elaborating these ideas to be implementable, and we're also finding out how effective they are in real life. So it's a matter of like thinking in detail, elaborating these ideas, visualize them, and show that these are things that can be made.
Okay.
It's not just a conceptual or far-reached.
Sounds interesting. I have one question, which is maybe the most subjective and the big question and the last for your project before we hand over to the others. It's the aesthetical one. You talked about the social aspects and the ecological aspects, and but I'm heavily biased as a professor, I think that sounds rather convincing. What about the aesthetical aspects? Isn't this the one that's most hard to judge? Do you think this is going in a beautiful direction, actually?
I mean, when you stick to the basics, we're using timber after all, and this is this is reflected in every part of our buildings, and by using module systems, you have also formity. It gives formity for when it comes to structure, to the logical part of building a block. You have you have a modular system where, and also the way you treated it and the way you find a lot of solutions how you can have variations, let's say, that reflects what you have actually inside. I think this is so.
It's honest. Is that?
It's honest, exactly. It's honest, and at the same time, it's uniformal, but it can also be very different. It gives you a lot of varieties.
Okay. And very last question: do you think that these principles are applicable to other sites, or is it just for this ZEKIWA site and that's it?
I think the ideas are implementable, and there's a lot of old industrial cities in Europe, and I think.
Sorry again.
The modules.
Yes. So sorry to interrupt once again. I would like to hand over to another student project here. So maybe you guys can come over. What about the time? Just to check real quick. There's not a lot of time, so maybe we could just give 2 minutes and then we hand over to Max project. That would be nice.
Yeah, I'll just give a short introduction to my project.
Mhm.
My project is actually inspired by the bricks and arches and chimneys of Zeitz, which is the industrial values of Zeitz. I'm appreciating Zeitz as an industrial city. So my project is adapting the brick and arches as the basic elements, the motif, and then try to implement into the project. And then this is to appreciate the past of the coal industry, and then also we had an idea of having a chimney because Zeitz used to release so many carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, but then we have a new idea of having a reverse chimney that suck in all the carbon dioxide that was released out from Zeitz, but it is a little bit unrealistic. So it's not so much developed in my further.
But this is an interesting question because CO2 is invisible. We would say CO2 has a design problem because if it would be green and stinky and stuff like that, we would have long-term done something against it. So this is your idea of creating a landmark to kind of refer to the past but then go to the future, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how was it for you, one last question, to come from a different cultural background and act here in Germany now and like being pushed into this small city of Zeitz in a totally different context? What are your thoughts on that?
It is a very interesting experience to try to design in climate and a place that I'm totally unused to because I came from Malaysia, a tropical country, where cooling is most of the issue I have to deal with in architecture. But here is mostly about heating and keeping the heat in the most of the time. Yeah.
And one last yes and no question. This looks very expensive. Will the people of Zeitz actually be able to afford that? It looks for me a little bit like an expensive penthouse. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, bricks and arches require a little bit of handcrafting, but then I think besides that, I think we can use like lightweight structures to keep the budget. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's maybe our different spirit. Even in public, we talk about the critical aspects, and we think it's very, very important because otherwise we cannot find new solutions, and we're not finished. Speaking of not finished, we have one last project, and this is Max' project they would like to look into. So hand over to Max. Thank you. We're squeezed in the corner. I hope this works.
So, the Kultureck Zeitz is a Genossenschaft typology, and as the name already says, it's a lot of interaction happening in this place. So I decided for the U-shape as an urban argument because, as you can see here on the side plan, you find this U-shape everywhere. And what it makes is basically interaction between the people they're living in this area. And so you have on one hand this private interaction, but on the other hand, you want to interact to the outside. You don't want to become a private, gated community that would not fit the Zeitz. So you have, as the name already says, Kulturecken everywhere. So these corners, they're activated. So basically, there is communal things are happening, and so it's a connecting point between Zeitz people, like they're already living there, all Zeitz people, and the new ones they want to live there now. And this is really important to, and it's like a driving force for this this project. But it's not only about interaction between people. What is also important is think about renewable energy, about sustainable materials, and I think to make it fast, we find here wooden construction, which can be produced before building, so can be mass produced. So that basically everything is not so pricey, and people who want to live there can afford it and have luxurious, not luxurious in the sense of it's super decaled, but yeah, you can do more with lower costs. And it's also important to think about sustainable energy, and everything is connected to each other. So there are buildings producing, for example, solar energy, and that is handed over to other buildings. They're producing heating with, for example, a heating pump. So everything is connected to each other to find the way back to this culture idea.
Max, I know you're a very good student, and I really like the argument about the U-shape, that people can actually see each other to connect to each other.
Yeah.
One last critical question. Why the box?
The box, I mean, this main building. It's
No, I mean, all of the buildings are pretty boxy, right? If I'm critical. So why is that?
yeah, this is like the this construction. It's like Abed, for example, already explained before. You will find one shape, one specific change, and you can like change facades to make these like more variety, bring more variety. But you have to lower the costs. You have these boxes you can put together simply. Yeah. So actually, you also can produce like much more variety with this. So.
Okay, but isn't it possible with new ways of manufacturing and stuff like that to think outside of the box as a critical thing, or do you think it's also an aesthetic decision? I think it would be very interesting to discuss. I mean, I personally appreciate it,
Yeah.
but the question is like, will it be approachable for everyone? Is it a solution that fits for everyone?
I would say yes,
Okay.
to make it short.
So we're open for the comments for that. We have our attitude on this, but we're open. This is always the thing that we're trying to do in the 21st century. We involve the stakeholders and we get something done, and then we collect the feedback on this. This is plan phase 0 that we're talking about right now, but as you can see, it's very, very tangible. And one of the reasons, as we said, is to give and get feedback on the drafts that we're having. It's an open spot. We think it should be developed. The city of Zeitz is developing, and the world is developing very, very fast. So to come up with something new, we have to be more open, and this is what we're trying to do here. So I think our time is nearly up. I don't carry a watch, but is there any questions from YouTube? No? No questions from the community? So, okay. What's the time? We're already above the time, aren't we? Okay. So I would like to finish this right now. Thank you very, very much to the online community for looking into this. We're open for the feedbacks. Come on over to Dessau, come on over to Zeitz, and see first person view the transformation process that we're in. You're invited to be part of the process, and I'm really, really thankful for initiating this within the country and also for the European Union. Thank you out there, and I'm really curious on where this goes. Thank you.